is the Bayesian Conspiracy. We are three people from the Less Wrong community who like to chat about rationality and chat rationally about other things also.
Hi, I'm Steven Zuber.
I'm Eneasz Brodsky.
And I'm Katrina Stanton. Welcome.
And today, because we try to stay somewhat current on things, and there has been an article making the rounds in the rationalist sphere, we are going to be talking about cryonics.
Hooray!
Yeah, there was an article on waitbutwhy.com that was called
Why Cryonics Makes Sense.
So this is a fun, rather long blog post, but it's worth the read, especially if you're anti-cryonics or think it's stupid or ridiculous or whatever.
Even if you're just vaguely interested in it.
Well, especially if you're vaguely interested, but if you're, the point is that the author started from a position where they were against it. They were like, oh, that's just some stupid thing that rich people do, or that's, science fiction mumbo jumbo, right? This is their journey from that perspective, kind of inch by inch retreating into, well, I guess this makes sense. So,
Spoiler.
Well, it's called
Spoiler
Why Cryonics Make Sense.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, we will have this article by Tim Urban available at our website.
TheBayesianConspiracy.com. I want to say real quickly why this article is awesome and why it made all the rounds. Because cryonics it's been in the rationalist sphere for quite a while, but it's generally pretty difficult to explain, and you have to pull through a lot of different sources and link people to a lot of things. And this article, while it is pretty damn long, is long because there's a lot to cover, and it explains it in very easy to understand language. It doesn't condescend to you, but it doesn't, hit you with crazy abstract things. It explains everything, step by step. And it provides lots of links, and it was just published a week or two ago, so it's very current right now, too. It's just an amazing article. It's everything you want, all in one place.
Okay, but let's say that somebody doesn't have a few hours to sink into reading this.
No, it doesn't. It only takes an hour to read, maybe. What's the word count?
I don't know. How can I find out that?
The way I usually do it is select everything and then paste it into either Word or Google Docs.
I'm not going to do that right now.
Okay. It's about an hour to read, though.
But we're just going to talk about cryonics.
Yeah, so I don't have to
based on this fun article. And if you're happy with what we say, then you don't have to read it. Congratulations. Or you could also go check out links at the Cryonics Institute. That's www.cryonics.org.
I will say that if you listen to this and you're happy with our covering of it, great, sign up. That'd be awesome. Listen to our if you listen to our episode and you're like, well, this still sounds stupid to me, I don't feel like they covered it, check out this post. This is what we would say if we had, I don't know how long it takes to say an hour's worth of text, but if we had 3 hours, we'd probably just read the whole thing. So
disclaimer. While we are not paid cryonics shills.
No.
Oh, you guys aren't? Oh.
We're all pro cryonics. Is that right? Would that be our stance?
Well, I'm already signed up.
Steven signed up.
I've been signed up for a few years.
And Katrina?
Is not yet signed up because I like to live dangerously.
Cryocrastinating.
Uh-huh.
Good idea.
That's the best word for it.
Cryocrastinating, awesome.
When I was first looking into it some years ago, I was messaging Eneasz about it because he was one of the few people I knew who were signed up, and going over some of my concerns with him and a couple of other people I knew who were signed up or thinking about it. And that still made it pretty easy to cryocrastinate. I like that word. That's my new word of the day.
You're young. You're not going to die anytime soon.
Well,
it's such a low probability of working out.
Well, so, alright, let me get to all those things in 1 second.
I mean, all that is true, but then there was the girl who got the brain cancer. And she was 26 or so?
Right.
And she didn't have anything. Well, a bunch of people stepped up and, we donated a bunch of money and we got her to, the point where she could just pay for it outright.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's not going to happen to everyone. She happened to be kind of lucky in that I think this is the first person that happened to in our community. And she was young and she was pretty, which are all things that, get people to donate.
Oh man.
So
if I get brain cancer, it has to be soon.
Yeah, well,
I can't be a middle-aged woman with brain cancer. No one's going to donate to my GoFundMe.
Exactly. You got to be at this point. I don't know if people would donate to me. They're like, I don't know, mid-30s, just not worth it anymore.
And I suppose I'm not pretty enough, so we're all screwed. Is what we're all paying for it out of pocket.
We aren't screwed. We're signed up.
We're covered.
Katrina, she'd be screwed in a few years, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to judge. Oh, I'm getting the evil glare. Katrina's like, I will still be pretty.
I don't know if I'll still be pretty, but you better freaking think I'm still pretty.
Okay.
So what I was saying was that my method of asking people about it as questions occurred to me, thinking about it and coming back with another question, made this period where I was interested, and the time between when I got interested and when I signed up was like a year. If I'd had this resource from that Wait But Why article, it might have been a couple of weeks.
I think before we get too into other things, we should tell people what cryonics is.
Yes, I do. We're a few minutes in and I meant to do that
important.
before.
Yeah, not everyone knows.
And it's an important definition because some people have preconceived ideas as to what it is. Oh, that's where they just dump your body in liquid nitrogen, right? A la Han Solo. It's not quite that. So the point of cryonics is to, well, how do we want to put it? Do we want to go off the definition, or what were you going to say?
When I tell it to people casually in conversation, I just tell them I'm going to get my body frozen when I die.
Yeah.
Because that's close enough for jazz.
That's all they need.
Yeah.
They're not, and then if they start to ask questions like, but won't your cells explode?
Right.
Then you're like, well, they have a little bit of a different technique.
Yeah. You're not actually just literally thrown in a freezer.
Right. I guess, so I like to, have just a little bit of background to it, because I guess to stave off some of those questions, or if they don't have time to ask them, but then they would have, if, whatever, if there was. So it's not just that I'm getting frozen when I die. The point is that,
you are being preserved.
Well, exactly. So being preserved in such a way that it's completely reasonable to suspect that future scientists might be able to restore you to working condition.
Let's start with what the point of cryo is.
Right.
What is the point of cryonics?
The point of cryonics is to make it so that people who aren't informationally dead, which is to say they can be declared legally dead, but they're still theoretically resurrectable or savable.
Rebootable.
Rebootable. So a good example is 100 years ago, if your heart stopped, you were dead. That's it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. In the 1950s, CPR came around, and now it turned out where if someone's heart stopped, you can keep them alive long enough to work with them a little bit. That definition of what is legally dead continues to be pushed back a little bit. Now people can be dead for minutes, in extreme cases hours, and be savable in today's hospitals. Mm-hmm. The point is that if someone is cryopreserved, you're basically getting them to the hospital where they can be saved, but that hospital might be in the year 2200.
You want to get them to a hospital that can save them when that hospital doesn't currently exist. Exactly.
As opposed to, say, flying them to the fanciest hospital in the country and getting them worked on there. Yeah. You're just flying them to the hospital 100 years from now, or 5 years, or 500 years, whatever your time frame is.
Hopefully only 5 years.
That'd be pretty cool.
If we're lucky. You see, the longer you're frozen, the less likely you are to be saved.
That's certainly the case with, I forget the guy's name, the first person to be cryopreserved in the 1960s, when technology was the worst. It was the worst human cryopreservation there probably ever was, because the technology sucked. Yeah. So there's a good chance that there's what people call the last in, first out hypothesis or idea, mm-hmm. which is where if whatever it's 20, we'll arbitrarily say 2200 as the year. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say we're getting a bit of a tangent.
Yeah.
Before I was wondering how exactly we're supposed to get the body to the future without it decaying in the meantime.
Oh, yeah. So your soundbite of freeze it works, right? So mm-hmm. biodegradation stops when you get really cold. Of course, all kinds of bad things happen to you when you get really cold, and that's why it kills you. So the idea is that you're cooled in such a way that it's non-damaging into anything that's really important.
It's still damaging. The process of vitrification is absolutely still damaging the way that we do it, but it's less damaging than sticking you in a deep freeze.
Well, yes, it's certainly far less damaging than sticking you in the ground and letting worms eat your brain.
That's very damaging. Or cremation.
Let's talk real quick about a few assumptions that cryo makes. One of the first thing it assumes is that who you are is contained in your physical body.
Right. What matters is at least your physical body, primarily what's between your ears.
Yes, that there is no such thing as a soul or a divine spark or whatever, which is separate from your physical material flesh.
That said, you can find people who will conjoin the positions and say, I can find some articles to link to. We'll put them on the website as well. But, for example, you could say, if you're cryopreserved, your soul never really leaves and it stays, and it sparks back up when your brain sparks back up again. The same way that if your heart stops during surgery.
Or it takes a vacation and then comes back.
That works too.
Interesting side note, when I was first signing up to get cryopreserved, I was still married to my crazy fundamentalist Christian wife. And there's a problem with cryo that your next of kin, your family, can stop it. They can say no and kick the doctors out of the room. They have the legal right to do that, and then you're fucked. So one of the things you really want to do is make sure that the person who has power of attorney is on your side. So it took some convincing to get her on my side, but eventually I was like, you know what? God's this all-powerful super being. My puny human technology is not going to interfere with his will. If my soul goes on to heaven or whatever, then you can't stop that by freezing me. Like, one of her really big concerns seemed to be that if I got frozen, my soul would be stuck to my body and it would be really cold and sad all the time.
Well, you're already dead by the time you get frozen.
That, legally dead, yes. And I'm not sure if that's good enough for God. And I guess she wasn't either.
Guys, this is another reason why I might have to have a kid. Because the only other people who are having kids who might have power of attorney over me are my husband's very Christian conservative family.
Well, no, if you are married, then your husband would have power of attorney. Assuming he's still alive when you die.
I assume he's going to die before me.
Oh.
Sorry, sweetie.
Wow, that was a given in your line of reasoning there. Why are you so sure?
In that case, wouldn't it be like your parents or your siblings?
Again, I'm
all gonna die before you.
I'm going to be 95 years old when this is even an issue. I'm going to be 95 years old. The only surviving people are going to be my husband's siblings' great-great-grandchildren, because they are going to have lots of kids, or just grandchildren or great-grandchildren.
Huh.
And they're going to be the ones who have to make that decision. So,
well, I mean,
they're lovely people.
You don't have to infect your own kids with your memes. You can infect, your nieces and nephews.
It's going to be more difficult because they're conservatively homeschooled.
Or pay an attorney to enforce your will.
Oh, wait, but
even if they manage to delay it for a while, that your brain rots.
Mm-hmm.
While
time is of the essence in this
the court
situation.
proceedings are
Keep them on
happening.
retainer when you're on your deathbed. Just be like, hey, you're spending the week at the hospital.
But one of the important things to do when you sign up for cryo, which I guess maybe we should wait until late in the episode to get into, is get your friends and family to at least say they won't fight it.
Right.
They don't have to be all totally on board, but tell them not to stop things.
And that's where I was at.
And don't tell them, get them to agree to it.
Yeah, otherwise they could just lie and say that they're doing it for good reasons.
Yeah.
So, yeah, getting people on board, or at least on board enough to, where they're not going to fight you and let you rot. So, part of the key to successful preservation is getting you into treatment before too much time has passed since legal death. Mm-hmm. Because while people can be declared legally dead for some time, some minutes usually before things start to go bad in their body, that window is pretty narrow.
So what's the best way to die if you want to be cryonically preserved?
In the hospital, knowing when you're going to die ahead of time.
Not dying of anything that would especially damage your brain.
Oh God, yes.
Volcanoes
damage your brain. So
thermite on the skull. Yeah.
Well, and there was that Cryonics. I don't like to say patient. What do you call someone who signed up for Cryonics?
They actually are patients.
So I guess that Cryonics patient who died in the September 11th attacks in New York City.
Yeah,
he's not a patient because his body was not recovered.
Well, that's my point. So he before they took their
I see.
Member.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a bummer, but that counts as an incident that makes you not a good candidate for successful preservation.
So jumping back a bit, because we are going all over the place today.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. That's partly my fault, too. I also got in my own digression, which I apologize for.
I was apologizing to the audience.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Not sorry for you.
Yeah, no. Fuck me. No, that the assumption is that everything that makes you is in your body and mostly in your brain. It is... We have a lot of reason to believe that is probably the case. And so, if the brain can be preserved, it is assumed that maybe someday it can be recreated as well.
Or restored to working order. Yes. So there are lots of lots of avenues by which successful reanimation or revival might take place. Nanobots to repair damaged tissue, functionally isomorphic replication through just computer parts.
Or biological parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could be silicon, could be carbon.
Clone farms.
Yeah, possibly. They could, mold how the brain develops so all the neurons get in the right place.
That was out of left field.
Well, I mean, that's a possibility, but like you said,
I think it'd be more likely to be on a silicon substrate.
Mm-hmm.
I guess
computer network.
Unless you couldn't, for whatever reason, reanimate the rest of the body, but you could fix the brain, so you just get a clone farm for whatever ethical constraints that you can keep them alive enough to get their head big enough to put your brain into, and then just, but that sounds like a lot of work. I think there are easier ways to do it.
Maybe you can use a positronic brain.
That's cryonics, but what are some other methods of preservation that people are checking out?
Plastinization is actually one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't heard of this.
Okay.
Yeah, that way they don't have to keep your brain frozen. They can just put it in a box in a warehouse.
You know those traveling see inside your body things that come to museums sometimes?
Yeah, Body Works.
Body Works,
Yeah.
that's right, it was.
Is it World?
Yeah.
No. Okay.
That's what they do. They take a corpse and they, soak it in these chemicals, and then afterwards what's left is basically just plastic. Sort of kind of rubbery, right?
Yeah. But it maintains the structure, although it's plastic now. So theoretically, you could look at that, and then I think the only way that you could be cured at that point is
recreation.
Yeah, complete. You can't fix that.
Gotcha. So it sounds...
But if it's done well, it would in theory be a complete map of your brain.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So that sounds, depending on what avenue and how you want to hedge your bets, that sounds like not the worst way to go.
Right.
So there have been examples where small organisms have been cryopreserved and restored. Was it 3 months ago? A few months ago, they vitrified a rabbit liver and then put it into another rabbit, and that rabbit had no ill effects. The liver worked fine. So reversal of cryopreservation has already been demonstrated. Is there any way to get a what was it called?
Plastinization.
Plastinization. Is there any way to reverse that whatsoever?
No. So that's permanent.
So it would be for preserving the brain to take a really good MRI picture later and then recreate it that way.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Something to look into. I don't know a lot about that.
But the way that cryo actually works, I call it cryo for short, as do a lot of people, is that when you die, they pump your veins full of a cryoprotectant solution, which gets circulated through your body through one of those thumper machines that keeps your heart going. Well, it doesn't keep your heart going, but thumps on your chest so that your heart squirts whatever is in it throughout your body. Squirt is the technical term.
I'm a scientist.
Yes. And as they're doing that, they're also cooling you down so that you don't rot as fast. But the purpose is to get the cryopreservative absorbed through all your cells, particularly in the brain. The brain's the important part. So that this cryoprotectant, once you get to a cold enough point, it replaces the water in your cells, most of them anyway, most of the water. So when you get cold enough, there aren't water within your cells to crystallize, which is what everyone mentions who doesn't know anything about cryo, is like, well, when you put your strawberry in the fridge and it freezes, when you unthaw it, it's mushy. That's because the water inside it crystallized, destroyed all the cells, which yes, water does, but that's why the cryoprotectant is there, to get rid of the water.
And sorry, I didn't mean to interject here.
Oh, it's okay. And once you get it cold enough, which is I think negative 250 something degrees, it goes through a process called glacination, where it is no longer a liquid. It is now a solid, but it doesn't expand like water does. It stays solid, and so all the molecules in your cells can no longer move. They can no longer degrade. They are frozen in place. And from that point, then they can put you in liquid nitrogen, which is even colder than that. It doesn't have to be any colder at that point, but the reason they use liquid nitrogen is because it's really cold and it's really cheap. So you can be cryopreserved for a long time very cheaply.
What I was going to mention was, which great summary there. I didn't mean to just move right past it. The strawberry example is one of the things I haven't actually heard people use strawberry specifically, but they mention all the time how water expands when frozen. You die. This kills the person.
Right.
This is something that, I guess if you see something being seriously talked about by people that you otherwise trust to be smart, and in 2 seconds you can think of a way that instantly points out how fatally flawed it is, at least ask them about it. There's a chance that you found the fatal flaw and that their community missed completely, but this would be, saying that everyone who's been on board with this so far hadn't realized that water expands when frozen. And
excellent point, Stephen.
People know that.
So, 2 major assumptions. One being that if you have the brain preserved, it can later be recreated or revived. And I, for one, think this is an assumption that as long as technology keeps progressing, as it has been for the past several millennia, at least, can we say?
Centuries.
Okay, as long as technology keeps progressing, we will we will eventually at some point get to the point where you can recreate a brain. I think that's just a 100% given. The only thing that could stop that is actual, like collapse of civilization type events. And the other one being what makes you is entirely in the brain, and that once that is recreated, you would be you again. which I don't see how anyone who is a materialist materialist in the philosophical sense, that there is no spiritual dualism, there's just, matter. I don't know how anyone who is a materialist could argue that point.
Well, maybe as a materialist, you could say, but I'm not me tomorrow, and I'm not me in 5 years, so why preserve this me in, X number of years after death, because it's yet another different person. Everything is replaced, everybody changes, and yeah.
I would at that point probably look at their lifestyle, and if they do anything to prepare for the next few days, I would call them a hypocrite.
You mean like eat or drink water or
keep a day job?
Sure.
Like if you're just living on the street for the momentary pleasure that brings you, I commend you, and you are living a consistent life. But if you save money and worry about your health and things, then you probably care about future you.
Yeah. Okay. You care about future you.
I certainly do.
That said, we'll try and make an effort to steelman the anti-Cryonics position if we get around to it.
Oh, yeah.
Is there anything else we want to say about the physics of cryonics? I will say the thing that makes cryonics most compelling to me is that there is no reason why it shouldn't work.
Those were exactly the next words to come out of my mouth.
Oh, really?
And almost the same enunciation. That was spooky. Yeah.
Like, there are reasons why ghosts shouldn't exist, like physical laws that are like, if the ghosts do exist, our knowledge of the laws of physics is fundamentally fucked. But there's nothing like that with cryo. Like, everything we know says that this is possible.
And that's where I'm at. So if someone's saying, well, aren't you just trying to hedge your bets on, well, what are they, I guess that's the better way to phrase it. Edit? I'm saying edit to myself.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think...
Speaking of future selves, Stephen, this weekend you're going to be editing this shit. Don't you hate the way your voice sounds? Jesus Christ.
I love the way Eliezer puts it. He thinks of it from the reverse side. He says that sometimes you want to destroy information. For example, let's say you want to delete a file off your hard drive. If you just delete it and empty your recycle bin, that can still be undeleted. There are ways, even if you overwrite your entire hard drive with zeros, it has been theorized, I don't know if anyone's actually done this, that with an electron microscope, someone with enough skill can see which bits used to be 0 and which used to be 1 and recreate them, the file. So there are actually programs out there called bit shredders, which people who are really paranoid use. After they delete something, they'll run it and it'll scramble all the bits like 27 times on their computer to just random noise. Well, the ones that are, marked to be deleted, so they cannot be recovered. But his point is, given the rate of how technology has increased over the past several hundred years, if that hard drive was still around 1,000 years from now, it's theoretically possible future people could come up with a way to even find that data after the 27 bit shreddings have gone through. So if you really want to make sure information is destroyed, you should just cover the whole hard drive with thermite and light it on fire, melt it down to slag. And his point is that if you want to destroy the information that makes a person, filling them with cryoprotectants and putting them in liquid nitrogen is a terrible way to do that. It is not a secure way to delete a person. So
succinctly put.
Yeah, so, they could be undeleted in the future with enough advancement in technology.
All right, I have some questions.
Do it.
So, why would future people decide to revive or decide to save cryonically preserved people from the past?
Why do people right now try to save anybody? Why do people give money to the Anti-Malaria Foundation to save people in third world countries from malaria?
So we might postulate a charity-minded culture in the future.
Or even just a small subsect of charity-minded people in a culture like ours.
And I would assume that if anyone does, bring a few people back out of charity, then the people who are brought back would probably have a strong motivation to bring other people back as well. I would assume that'd be one of their main goals once they are recreated in the future.
Like their friends and family.
Yeah, friends, family, even just other people that got cryopreserved.
Yeah,
it could have been me. We're in the same boat.
For sure. No, I just meant that, like, in general, if you're the first person brought back, you have and you have anyone else that you know in cryopreservation, by default, there's someone else you want to come out, even just for your own reasons. Right. But I totally agree that, especially while you're getting used to the future, well, I might as well work on bringing other people into the future, too.
Yeah. I just think that people would do it because only a good society would want to do that sort of thing, and you don't want to be resurrected into an evil society anyway.
one of the postulates for successful cryo-reanimation / resurrection. I don't like that word. Is there another word that's typically used in the lingo? Reanimation.
I think reanimation is the most common one.
Yeah. One of the prerequisite ideas / givens is that the future society will have some motivation, or at least some of the members of that society will have some motivation to work on reanimating cryo patients.
Yeah. And if they don't, then no, you'll just still be dead.
That's
that's kind of okay.
That was sort of
You're not any worse off.
That was
That's
exactly kind of the position that pushed me over the edge when I was still cryocrastinating. That, look, worst case scenario, I'm still dead.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's going to be where I'm at if I don't do anything. So why don't I try and do a little bit and get me there?
But what if there's an even worse case scenario?
Are we talking about the I have no mouth and I'm a scream scenario?
I mean, that's the worst possible case scenario. But
Are we talking about... I only said that so I can bleep it out later.
Oh, thank you. You are such a dick, dude.
I'll just delete it completely.
Okay. No, please go on. What were you saying? What's your worser case scenario?
What if you're brought back and it's not very nice? It's not very nice and you don't like the people and you're like, I'd rather not be here.
Then you can kill yourself.
What if you can't kill yourself?
That argument wasn't proposed to me until after I had signed up, and I'd been signed up for like 2 years, and it hadn't really occurred to me that, whatever future you live in might be, near utopian, but just doesn't suit you. And they're so anti-death that they're like, no, you can't check yourself out. Are you insane? You physically can't anymore. So
we went through all this trouble and you just want to die again. What if you're paralyzed and in pain at all times, but you can't kill yourself because you're paralyzed?
I feel like if they could successfully reanimate a frozen brain, they could fix paralysis.
Yeah.
Oh, you were reading...
Unless they're mean.
Right, so if
they're mean, why would they resurrect you in the first place?
Science?
But there's plenty of alive people to pick on. And yeah, I guess... So what, I guess you're weighing the number of possible futures that involve scientists who will go through the trouble to resurrect cryo patients and keep them alive just to see how much they can fuck with them.
Well, to see how a cryonically preserved brain does after X amount of time, Y amount of time, in this situation.
They'll probably do that even if they really care about you and they want to see how your well-being, because they want to make sure that things are going to go well. But they're not going to keep you locked in a room tied to an MRI machine. They're going to, hey, can you come back every couple of weeks so we can scan your brain?
So there are... here's how I think about it. There are a certain number of possible futures that would be nice, or you can at least still be dead or kill yourself again if you don't like it. And then there is an even tinier chance of there being a possible future where it's terrible and you can't check out even if you want to. But the allure of the larger possibility future set of better outcomes makes it worthwhile. So that's how I see it.
I think that's exactly right, is that as long as you're doing that kind of calculus, you can look at and say, okay, what are the odds? Like, well, you just laid it out, but that was my comeback when I first heard the counter argument from somebody about, well, what if you can't kill yourself or they won't let you? It took me some time to think, well, you know what? I think it's still worth it because I obviously assign a lower probability to that than I assign to being resurrected at all.
Mm-hmm.
So
I know not everyone thinks this, but personally, I find it incredibly difficult to imagine a future where humanity has gotten to the point where they can, bring people back and are willing to expend the resources to do so just to torture people.
Well, maybe it is like the AI horror story that you mentioned, I have no mouth, but I must scream, and it is an AI that brings you back just to torture you.
Yeah, but that's ridiculous.
It's highly unlikely. But obviously people have imagined it because it's a story that was written down.
people also imagine biblical heaven.
Right. I'm just
so like as long as we're weighing like post legal death scenarios.
You have to try really fucking hard to build an AI.
said he couldn't imagine it.
To build an AI who is motivated to torture humans. It's so unbelievable. I can't. It's difficult enough to build an AI that isn't going to wipe out all of humanity just because they don't care. But one that specifically tries to preserve humanity just so they can torture them?
Man, I'm going to do that just to spite you. Just kidding, don't kill me.
I was going to say, I think we have to kill you now.
No.
We were talking about
joking.
this before.
It was totally a joke. I'm a nice person.
For now. You're so sure you're going to outlive your husband.
Oh, what does she know that her husband doesn't?
I'm having difficulty thinking of ways to continue the joke. All right, so now that we've had enough fun at Katrina's expense, where were we?
Cryonics.
Yeah, so I think the shitty future is the least likely reason to reject cryonics. There's other reasons that I can sympathize more with.
Okay, let's talk about those reasons.
Oh, well, recently I've heard that some people think that the hormones and chemicals that are in your brain is a very big part of what makes you you. And since the cryopreservation doesn't preserve that, it only preserves the structure of your neurons, that it wouldn't be you. And I just disagree.
Well, then it would be a slightly different person, just like the previous example, how you're a different person in 5 years.
Yeah.
You're a different person when you get off birth control. You're a different person.
Exactly.
You still
It would be
care
me in
about
a
that
different
person.
mood.
Yeah.
And they give you some pills and that stuff balances out, or whatever they don't. Well, I mean that seriously. Like, if it came back to where you were just full on zombie without, for whatever reason, if all the hormones wiped out. Do you need to sneeze? Go ahead.
No, I was doing that quietly for a reason.
I wasn't sure if that was a suppressed sneeze or I'm getting ready to sneeze.
No,
I was blowing out my ears. I couldn't hear.
Oh, damn.
I heard an amazing podcast. I think it was This American Life. I don't listen to anymore because it's depressing as hell. But they had an amazing episode on testosterone. And there's some people that occasionally have their testosterone just kick out. Their body stops making it. And the changes they go through personality-wise are drastic and fascinating. So, I mean, it is a big part of who you are, but again, it's still you, just in a different mood. And I assume they would give you a standard cocktail for human, and you'd be close enough.
That's what I'm saying, right? So even today we can correct hormone problems.
Yes, I'm on antidepressants to correct some hormone problems.
And people are on testosterone to fix testosterone issues. So if that's doable today, when I think future scientists will look back and be amazed at how little idea we had of what we were doing when we were doing medicine, I think there's every reason to suspect that in the future they'll have a perfect cocktail to put you either right back how you were or better than where you were.
So that is why I dismiss that, but there are people that think that it is a big enough deal that it's not preserving them. I've also heard some people think that the actual electrical activity in your brain is who you are, and, it changes from moment to moment constantly, but that running record of who you are is uninterruptible. And if you were to be frozen, since that isn't, kept, when you're rebooted, again, it's not you.
I guess I would ask why they have such high confidence in that belief.
I don't know. So I'm just saying
That
what
they
other
would
people
be,
have said.
that they would be willing to not take a chance on that.
Well, so first of all, I think that, so are they saying that when you're brought back, you're not you, or you're not bring backable?
Some people say one, some people say the other, that you're literally not brought back. You cannot be brought back without that information.
So if the answer is that you're just dead, if they can't bring, if your electrical...
Your information theoretically dead.
Right. So if that happens, well, that brings you back to, kind of caveat A. You're no worse off than if you didn't sign up in the first place. I guess you're out some $10 a month.
We should get into that after this.
Which, yeah.
We'll jump into the costs. But ultimately, I think that could be something a lot like, with the hormone cocktail. Unless for whatever reason it just, I guess I don't know enough about how neurochemistry works to, or I guess neuroelectrochemistry to know what would happen if you ceased it completely and then started it up again. But that happens once in a while with people who are alive today.
I assume so.
People go under brain surgery. They turn off a lot of that stuff. People get electrocuted. I mean, not everyone survives electrocution, but I guess electroshocked. I forget which one is, there's a different word for which one kills you. Electrocuted versus electroshock. I think you survive electroshock, because that's what they called, electroshock therapy, yeah. Therapy in quotes.
Not important.
Yes.
So important? Vocabulary? Come on. How else are they going to prove your nerd cred unless you don't correct them when they use the word electrocute when they meant electroshock?
How can it drag this out to an hour and a half if we don't quibble over every little thing?
I am riding on your nerd cred. Is that cool?
I guess I'm nerdy enough right now.
Stephen will carry us through.
Well, I'll get us through.
So yeah, there's, and the one I was talking previously about the chemical balance, some people also think that once that is gone, you are information theoretically dead as well, and cannot be brought back.
Okay.
So
well,
there are those.
Could be.
Yeah.
And if so, then you remain dead.
Right.
That's sort of where I'm at. Of course, we'll have answers to these questions in the next few years. There's every reason to suspect that the next organ that they're going to freeze on a rabbit and put into another rabbit is going to be a brain. And I have a very high bar for what I tolerate with animal experimentation in general. We can dive into that later. But these sorts of things I'm sort of okay with. Not does the shampoo make people's eyes burn so much that they won't use it?
Right.
But things like, will this save people who die forever? Or give them a much better chance at living? That sounds like worthwhile experimentation.
Or save rabbits.
That
How many rabbits do you sacrifice to save how many other rabbits?
we can email Peter Singer and ask him.
That's actually a good question.
I mean, it applies to humans too, but
Yeah.
I'm using rabbits to be less offensive right now.
Right.
Oh, I didn't catch that. Sorry. Jeez. I'm like, I don't know how many rabbits equal a person or how many rabbits we could sacrifice for the good of other rabbits. For
Well,
people.
the good news is you're not allowed to kill people by freezing them cryonically and then transplant their brains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Growth
we
mindset.
don't, so it's really just a thought experiment right now, how many people we should sacrifice to save for the greater good.
Wait, is anyone talking about sacrificing anybody?
No.
No, but
I'm
we
not.
could.
Well, so, I mean, this, like in the whole, movie genre of doing all this stuff to death row inmates, but I'm not really behind that because I'm not really pro death row, so.
No, of course not. Oh, we're all agreeing again.
Are we all anti-death penalty?
Yeah.
Are we, yeah. So, just to bring us back to a position where we can disagree, are we all anti-killing anybody altogether?
I'm kind of
Yeah.
anti-killing people.
Yeah.
I'm generally anti-killing people, but I think there are circumstances in which it would be dumb not to, but now we're getting way too far afield.
Well,
I just wanted to make us
sometimes
argue.
if you have to,
Right.
in order to prevent worse things, then sure.
If you have to, so that goes back to the bunnies question. If you gotta kill somebody to save a lot more people, maybe
Yeah.
that's the right thing to do. Like if somebody's like, I'm going to push a button and extinguish all life on Earth, then the moral thing to do is to kill that person before they can push the button.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, if some bunny is going to do that, you have to, right?
Right.
Fucking evil bunnies. You know how you can tell they're evil?
How?
The sharp, pointy teeth. No.
And the
Do
glowing red
you?
eyes.
Wait,
What?
why? You have a bunny with sharp pointy teeth?
Am I the only one who's seen
Monty
Monty
Python?
Python?
Oh.
I
God, I'm so old.
thought we were. Oh no, I saw it too. I knew what you're talking about,
okay.
but I thought we were going to make a joke about how you're the only one who doesn't know what a rabbit looks like.
I was thinking
That would've been a much better
Bunnicula.
joke.
I was thinking Bunnicula, but that's totally different.
Yes, we got to talk about that again someday.
Okay, never mind.
Okay.
Never mind for right now. Put that in your pocket for the future.
Rationalist children's book reading.
Okay, so I know somebody who's very close to me, and his response to me saying that I was going to sign up for Cryonics is, I'm comfortable to die when it's my time.
Hmm.
That was my position before I realized that cryonics was a viable option, or was a viable enough option to consider. Between the period when I lost my vaguely religious upbringing and got more into my, anti-death position. Oh, I wanted to talk about that not necessarily before, but during this episode. About whether or not this is a good thing in general to even try to do, to radically extend the lifespan.
We should
we'll
do
get
that
there.
when we do our immortality episode.
Oh yeah, we're doing an immortality / deathist episode later, so we'll save it for that.
Okay.
But I thought it was tangentially related. But I guess it is given for people who want to sign up for Cryonics that yes, living longer is a good thing.
Or, just living long enough to see the future and see if it's neat or not neat.
I have this essay that I go to often about this topic. It's on Less Wrong, of course. And it's basically the TLDR is life's a bitch, but at least you die, is how most people view life. And the guy talks quite a bit about how when you go to most older people who've, gone through life, they've had their kids, they've had their career, they've retired, and you ask them, did you enjoy your life? They're like, yeah. Like, you're happy with everything that you did? Yeah, I got me kids. Everything is very fulfilling. You want to do it again? Pfft, fuck no. Are you kidding me? Because there's kind of a natural arc to the human life where you're excited about things when you're a kid. You're excited about learning, and then you get, or playing and learning, same thing basically. Then you get tired of that. Then you have a passion, and then you get tired of that. And then you have children, and then you get tired of that. And eventually, the things that we have evolved to find really interesting, we lose interest in them, and there's nothing we're really interested in anymore, and then we just die.
Do you find that convincing? Because my grandfather really, really did not want to die.
I don't
was
think
super bummed about it.
I don't think that's the case with everyone. The whole point of the article, which the reason I like the article, is that it says you are the exception. You are the sort of person who is really excited about things in life and wants to do them more. You want to learn. You want to explore the cosmos. And most people just don't have that. And so your mission is to go out and twist people like you're twisted. Make them sick like you so they want to keep living. They have the reason to keep living. And so I think there is actually a lot of people who just don't want to live that long. And I mean, some of it is just that getting tired of life thing. Some of it is probably depression. Like, there's a lot of people who don't want to be alive right now because they deal with serious depression and just, have a hard time killing themselves.
I would say, I'm sorry.
Which I think is actually probably a good thing, because I think a lot of depressions resolve over time.
I completely
But those
agree.
are the kind of people that when I hear they don't want to live longer than their natural lifespan, it makes me very sad. But I can understand how some people wouldn't want that.
Also, natural lifespan is very subjective, as we talked about earlier.
I wanted to touch on that. I think another large part of people not wanting, say if you asked an old person, do you want to do this again, is that they've been old for the last 30 or 40 years, and being physically old sucks.
Yeah.
You're constantly tired, you hurt all the time, everything is exhausting, and everything's a chore. So, I mean, the idea of saying, hey, you want to do that for another century? Sounds awful. Yeah. But that's not what longer lifespan advocates are all about.
I love your point about the natural lifespan definition. One of my favorite lines from Dumbledore is when he's talking to Harry Potter, rationalist Dumbledore, when he's talking to Harry Potter about immortality, and he says, I would not want to outlive my natural 2.5 centuries. And it's just such a contrast, because we always think natural is 70, 80.
Right. And then Harry has that bite back where he's like, yeah, it must suck to die at the ripe young age of, say, 80.
Yeah.
And he's thinking about his parents, his muggle parents.
What did we want to touch on next? Did we want to go into the cost of cryo, or is there other things first?
I guess as far as life expectancy, like I said, I think it's heavily tied to how old you feel. If being 60, 70, 80, 90 didn't get progressively worse, I think people will be less inclined to say I'm ready to die.
Okay.
Also, your grandpa's a badass.
My grandpa was a badass. Unfortunately was.
Oh.
And unfortunately, he thought he was going to die very, very soon for a long time.
Ooh.
And so he would often kind of tell me that I needed to write my next novel in the next 2 years, tell this to a 7-year-old.
Ah.
And then look sad. He ended up dying when I was in college.
Wow.
So
he hung on for a while.
He was very healthy. Very healthy.
That was a lot like my great-grandfather. I think, well, I don't know. It's hard for me to talk about. We'll talk about that in my immortality episode.
Okay.
Or in the immortality. Well, just in general, this is my dad's grandfather. He died 4 or 5 years ago. But it's tough just because I guess we'll get into all the reasons why death sucks next time or on a later episode. But yeah, anyway, so it's not like
I miss my grandpa.
Why did he think he was going to die for so long?
Because he's old.
Oh.
How old was he?
I don't remember how old he ended up being. 90-ish? A little older than that.
I was very fortunate in that I knew, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of my great-grandparents, of my parents' grandparents. So, yeah, we live forever. The Zubers are a healthy bunch. Not for long, says that stare.
No, that stare was while I'm thinking about sperm donors.
He's got some longevity over there.
We do have a lot of good traits, and the reason I bring that up because it's been told to me by at least 2 people that after I've declared that I don't intend on having children, that they say you should still at least donate sperm.
We should save this for our reproducing episode.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Gosh, it's so easy for us to get off topic.
But the best thing is we're not running out of things to talk about.
True.
So, back on topic, my family members, one of their main complaints was, this is something that's only available to rich people.
It depends on what you mean by rich. I mean, the global poor certainly aren't going to be able to afford it, and it's not even available in most countries outside of the US. But in America, you don't actually have to be rich. You can, I'm certainly not rich. I'm middle class, and I was making even less when I first signed up. It's not that expensive, depending on who you go with. I'm signed up with the Cryonics Institute. And Stephen?
Cryonics Institute. And I was making less than $20,000 a year when I signed up.
Okay.
I was full-time college, part-time worker. But the other thing to mention is that I think just before we even talk about how cheap it is that it's too expensive and it's only for rich people is true of basically every new medical development.
It's true.
And it costs go down eventually. But, whether or not that's the case, that might be just an unfortunate bummer reality about it. That's not necessarily an argument against it.
It also scales not poorly anyway. So if a lot more people signed up, it would be cheaper per person.
Mm-hmm. So we want more people of all sorts of different income levels to sign up.
But mainly because we don't want people to die.
That's really where it's at, yeah. I feel like, kind of like looking back now. So, we look back, and I guess we can talk about this in our mortality episode, but it ties in tangentially. Mm-hmm. And we all miss our grandparents. Well, they miss their grandparents. And it's just a bummer that this has been happening the whole time, and no one's really been doing that much to work on it, dying and death.
I don't think there's really much people could have done before 10 years ago or so.
That's true. I mean, they could have started looking, well, yeah, alright, fair enough. But the fact that people are still arguing that it's not worth working towards, or you can die at 90 and it's not a big deal.
That's fucking annoying.
It is kind of annoying.
But don't we want people to die because overpopulation?
We can get into that in our immortality episode.
And no.
And no is the answer. Steven,
okay.
So how much are you paying for the cryo?
So Cryonics, well, actually, so you did the lifetime membership, which I think when you signed up for that was $1,000.
It was $1,000. Now it's like $1,200.
It's $1,250.
$1,250. Okay.
But that said, $1,250 for a lifetime membership to CI, or $1,200 or $120 a year / $10 a month, and that's what I pay because I still haven't put down the lifetime payment yet.
We should tell people what this means. To actually be preserved by the Cryonics Institute, you have to be a member. And to become a member, first of all, you sign a lot of legal paperwork, but also you pay a fee, which is either $1,200 at this point and you're a member for the rest of your life, or you can pay, how much is it per year?
$120.
$120 per year, so $10 a month. And roughly that will also make you a member for that year. Roughly
the cost of your Netflix subscription. That was what put me over the board on my financial analysis, was like, so that's 2 Starbucks or 1 Netflix for an arbitrarily calculated percentage of success that might bestow functional immortality.
But that is not the entire cost. There is also the actual cost of preserving you, which is, I believe, about $12,000?
$28,000.
$28,000, okay, with CI. And that's only if you die near their facilities.
And CI is short for Cryonics Institute, because that's a mouthful.
$28,000. Wow. So are they going to have that much from you?
There's more cost than this. It's $28,000 if you die right there. You're probably going to have to pay, if you aren't in Michigan, you're probably going to have to pay to have some professionals nearby to immediately get you cryopreserved, and that costs extra as well.
I can hear our listeners asking, why Michigan? What the hell? That's where CI is based out of.
Yes. But, altogether...
And who wants to live there when you're old? It's cold.
Yeah.
Who wants to live there?
Yeah.
Period.
Sorry, everybody from Michigan.
Everyone I know from Michigan would agree with that statement.
Everyone I know from Michigan moved out of Michigan.
Yeah.
I've never been there, so I don't know anyone there.
I know my in-laws are still there, and they also agree with the statement, except for the older retired ones who, now it's cheap to live there, so.
All right, anecdotally, nobody likes to live in Michigan, so you will also have to pay to get your body transported to Michigan.
Yes. So altogether, it comes out to about $100,000.
Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less.
Mm-hmm.
So you pay Cryonics Institute $28,000 to freeze you, and then you pay Suspended Animation Inc. to transport you, and we talked about pumping you full of cryoprotectant and keeping your heart going long enough to get all that going through your system. They're the group that'll do that, unless you happen to die at the doors of the Cryonics Institute.
Right. And the way most people pay for that is through life insurance. Because life insurance has this amazing thing where as soon as you're declared legally dead, it pays out. I mean, not literally right that instant, but generally within a day. Which is nice because if you were to set up some kind of trust, it can take weeks for that money to go through after you die. And at that point, you are a big, soggy, mushy pile of goo and there's not much left to preserve. So the life insurance option is really awesome, and it is entirely legal, and there are people who specialize just in life insurance for cryopreservation.
The life insurance agent that I worked with and that comes highly recommended for getting you set up for Cryonics is Rudy Hoffman, operating out of Florida. He was great my entire time working with him. Back and forth emails. We talked on the phone a few times, and he, like every good insurance agent does, but, sent me all the documents, little colored tabs saying this is what this part says, this is sign here, this and that. Anyway, 10 out of 10, Rudy Hoffman. We'll link to him on the website if we don't feel like that's shelling too much.
That being said, I just went through the company that was doing my car insurance at the time. They also provided life insurance, State Farm, Shani Sorensen. And, she needed it explained a little bit to her, but afterwards she was like, yeah, sure, it's life insurance, it's a business. We got the legal work squared away, and it didn't take very long.
Today I learned that State Farm life insurance can go through CI. I could have sworn that when I signed up, it was only Kansas City Life that would let CI be a beneficiary. Yeah.
You can declare anyone as a beneficiary, even, charitable institutions.
Why did I think that it was... There was some sort of reason that I was... Maybe it was only because that's who Rudy Hoffman works for, but
okay.
For some reason I could have sworn that there was some stronger incentive to use Kansas City Life.
Yeah, I mean, you might get like an agent who's like really religious or some crap, in which case switch agents, but most people treat it as a business. You want life insurance? That's where you want the money to go? Fine.
Right.
They'll get it done.
There are life insurance agents who will let your dog be your beneficiary, like you see on those TV shows.
Okay, then.
Or at least on TV shows that talk about fake TV shows. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this actually happened. I could have sworn, but it's been a long time.
It sounds like something that may have happened.
I haven't had cable in a while.
But what sort of life insurance did you get? Because that also impacts how much it costs.
Right. I got whatever the bare bones was when I was, like I said, I was not making that much, but I thought I should just stop thinking about it and get it taken care of at the time.
And how much do you pay per month?
$27.
Okay, so if you get the bare bones, which covers the cost, the $100,000, it's $27 a month if you're fairly young.
And I was an elite candidate as far as health and stuff, but I think my policy was for $150,000.
Nice.
So I had a tiny bit of wiggle room, but enough to cover whatever legal fees.
The interesting thing about that's a term life insurance, is after 30 years, when your life insurance expires, if you haven't died yet, it goes away, which means that, nobody gets the money. It is literally insurance in case you die. And since you haven't died, you don't need the insurance anymore. I got and for a lot of people that works, because there's a lot of people who assume that functional immortality will basically be discovered within the next 30 years. And so if they make it through 30 years, they'll be okay. They basically will stop aging, or be at least in front of the curve enough that they don't have to worry about dying of old age.
We'll talk about longevity, escape velocity in our immortality episode.
Yes. So there's a lot of people that are just fine with that. I, on the other hand, do not want to make estimates like that about time frame, especially when it comes to my, immortal life on the line. So I paid extra for the one that after the 30 years ends, if you're still alive, they give you back all the money you've put into it so far. So it costs me $60 a month for the same insurance. I think I have about $120 for my life insurance. Costs me $60 a month, so a little more than twice as much as Steven pays. But at the end of 30 years, if the singularity hasn't come, and if, immortality hasn't been found, and if I'm still alive, I'll get that money back, and so I can give it directly to CI. It'll only be about $60,000, so I'll have to kick in another $40,000. Hopefully by then I'll have another $40,000 saved up, because I will have been planning for this. And then I can just give them the money directly and be like, hey, here's the cash.
That's a pretty sweet deal.
Your agent will probably tell you about these different options.
Yes.
Yeah, Rudy definitely did. And I didn't know I signed up for the term policy. He must have explained it, and I just said, right now I'll do cheapest, and never got around to reassessing it.
I think I wish we had an economist here, because I think there are reasons to do the cheapest and to not do
what I did.
Not do Eneash's options. I am not at all sure about that, because I'm not an economist, but I have heard whispers.
Well, there's the fact that $60 right now is worth a lot more than $60 in 30 years.
Aha.
Yeah.
That would be it.
Yes.
Yeah. So there are things that you shouldn't do, and one of them is buy a full life insurance.
Right.
That's why I know that saying.
Full life insurance is a terrible idea.
Full life life-insurance is a terrible idea. Obviously, what you're doing is different. It's
not as good, but, you know, I kind of like hedging my bets. I've always been risk averse.
Maybe you should be investing that extra $30.
You know, maybe I should.
And then you would have better outcomes than paying it into this life insurance.
Calling all economists, what should we all do?
No, I think actually you make a very good point, and if I had it to do over, I'd probably do that. I think I might be able to change it still.
I'm sure you can. It's your policy.
Yeah. All right.
You just stop paying one and start another one, yeah.
But in Steven's case, you're paying $37 a month, which is
27.
Plus the 10 a month.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. In my case, I paid $1,000 up front, and I'm paying $60 a month. And in both cases, that's less than you pay for cable if you have cable. It's less than you pay for high-speed internet if you have high-speed internet.
Well, I'd rather die than not have high-speed internet, but or landline.
Die permanently.
Or like I said, $20 a month is a lot of people's like Starbucks budget, you know, or whatever your coffee provider of choice.
$20 a week is a lot of people's Starbucks budget.
That's true.
Yeah. So it's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, although, you know, if you're living near the poverty level, you're probably not going to be able to afford it. Because people that close to not having enough money can't swing an extra $40 a month.
That said, if you're would it be in poor taste to say dying to look into this? Get in touch with somebody at CI. They do have ways of working with people who can't necessarily afford everything right away. They're largely philanthropic. They're not in this for the big bucks. So if you're, I obviously don't work for them. I can't be sure. In fact, this probably won't happen, but I think there's a non-zero chance that if you get in touch with them and say, look, this is what I've got to work with. I don't want to die. How can I work with you people? Someone there will talk to you. So, don't rule yourself out if you think that you just literally can't afford it. I wanted to touch base on this before I forget, as long as we're jumping around a little bit. With the paperwork that they send you, one of the, so I generally have an admonition against lying, but I signed a piece of paperwork that was sent to me saying I have a religious objection to autopsy, even though I don't have a religious objection to anything.
And now it's on tape. Stephen, the liar.
I actually like to think of atheism as a form of religion, even though a lot of people say it is the opposite of having a religion.
Yeah, you're going to piss off every atheist in the audience.
Yeah, I know, but it is a belief about the afterlife and about supernatural things. And I honestly am of the opinion that it should be as protected as any other belief about those things. And I seriously think it should be protected by the Second Amendment. It is a religious, quote-unquote, belief in those terms.
The First Amendment.
Is it the first? Oh, right. The Second Amendment is the guns. I can defend my own Second Amendment rights. Thank you very much.
So, yeah, that whole thing aside, I see where you're coming from, especially with perks like this, right?
Right.
So if it just happened because I'm an atheist that I suddenly can't get this awesome perk of not having the doctors cut my brain up after I die, thus killing me forever, if only my lack of belief counted as a religion, then that wouldn't happen. So, yeah, I let myself be a little dishonest on paper and say, yes, I have a religious objection to autopsy. And they highly recommend that you sign that. Yeah. They also send you a document which says, under what circumstances do you want to be preserved? And you can check a box that says, only perfect preservation. I'm there, whatever, basically like euthanasia style preservation. I checked the box that said, use your best judgment. You guys are the experts. Don't waste your time and money. Don't waste my money. Whatever, it's like some borderline case. I get into a car accident and there's some brain hemorrhaging before I'm taken to the hospital and I die on the way there or something. There might be some damage or whatever. They'll use their own best judgment guess.
And usually they do preserve.
I think so.
It's only if there's extensive damage that's irreparable that they don't.
Right.
Okay. So, two things that make cryonics interesting to me personally. Well, not that make cryonics interesting. Two things that are interesting about cryonicists. The first is that generally we don't consider ourselves dead when we're preserved. And so this came up a few times when I was with my crazy fundamentalist wife. If someone were to yank my body out of the liquid nitrogen tank and let it rot, I consider that murder.
I agree.
I don't.
The technology there, or excuse me, not the technology, the terminology there agrees with you as well. They don't say you're dead, they say you're a patient.
Yes.
And I prefer that, not just because I'm a fan of wordplay, I'm not really, but because it's more accurate in this case.
I understand why you prefer that, and I understand why you would think of it as murder. But the way that I see it is I'm going to be dead, and I'm probably going to stay dead unless I totally luck out. And it turns out that I don't have to stay dead.
The way I see it is I am on my way to a hospital in the future, and I probably won't make it there. But if somebody stops the ambulance and makes sure that I die, even though I probably wouldn't have made it there anyway, fuck them, they're a murderer.
And you paid for the trip.
And I paid for the trip too, but I'm more concerned about the ethical, ramifications of being murdered.
It's a lot like,
I don't care about the money, I care about not dying.
It's a lot like in your living will, you can say, do your best to keep me alive, and somebody's like, no, we're not even going to try CPR. Like, that sounds like, if pulling someone out of a cryo tank isn't murder, then how is that?
No,
how many people have been murdered thusly, or in other words, taken out of deep freeze?
I think none. I mean,
you don't think anybody's been thawed because of a business failure?
They have been thawed because of business failure. I mean, that literally has happened, but that wasn't because someone was pulling them out. Because I was personally threatened with this, like, oh no, I love you too much, I would pull you out of there. And I was like, you will literally be murdering me. Get your hands off. I consider it different when a business fails. That would be like the ambulance getting a flat tire or something. That's not something that someone did to kill me.
But among things that you can expect are reasonably expect to happen are the business failing and you getting thawed out, or somebody, I don't know, showing up and pulling you out of deep freeze because they have a religious conviction, or
blowing up the facility or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. The first one I would not consider murder. The second two I would.
Okay.
Right.
Seems very subjective.
Well, just to torture your analogy of on an ambulance ride, if the ambulance had if the vehicle itself had some sort of a huge failure on the way to the hospital, that's not, they didn't mean to kill you. You just died in the back. They were doing their best. That said, I think that the business failure is something that, obviously you need to put into your calculus of whether or not you want to do this, but it's less likely, I think. Well, actually, I'm not a forecast economist, but there was a CI business or a cryonics business that went under. Mm-hmm. And, I think that current ones are taking steps to make that not happen.
Yes. That's one of the reasons it's more expensive than it used to be.
Right.
Charity cases.
I suppose that could be in some cases considered negligent homicide, depending on how the business was run. But I don't know how the business was run. I haven't looked into it.
Unfortunately, the law hasn't expanded to adequately take cryonics into account.
Yeah.
That is something that also, I guess, need to consider about signing up, is that I will go ahead and say bullshit law could make reviving you illegal or make not unplugging you illegal.
Right. There's a number of ways that there's a number of failure modes.
But then exactly. So all the ways that you can think of is that might shut this down and make it not work. Just think of what are the odds of that happening. Again, put that all into your calculus and weigh that against what are the odds of my surviving with all of those things, and what are the odds of my surviving if I'm buried.
Well, right.
I think that's the appropriate way to look at it.
I sort of agree, but like anything that's a really truly minuscule percentage, I don't think is worth thinking about. It's like, what are your odds of winning the lotto if you don't buy a lotto ticket?
Right. Fair enough. If it gets down that far.
Yeah.
I should have caveated.
I personally, there are a number of people I know who think the percentages are in the single digits, sometimes even in the low double digits. And that for me is totally worth the money.
So, yeah, I think Robin Hansen...
Single-digit percentage. I think Robin Hansen said 5%.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. But what if it's not 5? Well, what if you're a little bit more pessimistic and it is 0.5%? It's probably still worth it.
Exactly. And use your own best judgment on how low you're willing to go. Hansen's calculus was pretty conservative and pretty pessimistic, I think. I went through it and I would have given much higher values to a couple of the things that he put really low probability on, but he's the literally professor in this field. So that said, is a 1 in 20 chance worth $10 a month / a life insurance policy? Is a 1 in 200 chance worth it? That's your value call, but for a lot of people it is.
The other thing that I find interesting about this whole movement is that all of a sudden euthanasia becomes a lot more important. Mm-hmm. Because my nightmare scenario is getting Alzheimer's and then not being able to do anything about it while my brain slowly dies. Mm-hmm. And I want the ability to be able to choose when I die before there has been a lot of damage, so that I can be, brought back in a society that has cured Alzheimer's. Absolutely. And that makes the right to die movement and the dying with dignity movement so much more important. I mean, I always was on the side of being able to choose when you die, but it just became much more pressing after that. So, is there anything we want to cover? Because it kind of feels like just dropping it at this point is not the best way. We need some kind of ramp out. Katrina's ready to go. I have to go. Okay, so we are about out of time, and I just wanted to end with these quotes that came that are actually on the Wait But Why Cryonics Makes Sense article. These are quotes that he says, cryonicists never waste an opportunity to point them out. But whenever people say things like, cryonics is so way out there, it'll never happen, you're ridiculous, we will never have this sort of tech, we like to quote this at them in return. There is no hope for the fanciful idea of reaching the moon because of insurmountable barriers to escaping the Earth's gravity. Dr. Forrest Ray Moulton, University of Chicago astronomer, 1932. All this writing about space travel is utter bilge. Sir Richard Woolley, Astronomer Royal of Britain, 1956. We were well on our way in space. To place a man in a multi-stage rocket and project him into the controlling gravitational field of the moon, I am bold enough to say that such a man-made voyage will never occur regardless of all future advances. Dr. Lee DeForest, famous engineer, 1957. So, that's something that I like about this sort of thing, is that
just in the face of all of the, well, it sounds like science fiction mumbo jumbo. It's not science fiction. It's science fiction in the same way that a colony on Mars is science fiction. Is that it's science fiction and not science fantasy.
Right.
It's not Star Trek. There's zero reason why.
There's no reason it couldn't happen?
There's no reason why, without enough effort and scientific progress, we couldn't colonize Mars. By that same vein, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to go through and revive Chronix patients.
Alrighty. That was our Cryonics episode.
The only thing I'll add is that do check out this Why Chronix Makes Sense on waitbutwhy.com.
It is an amazing resource.
It really is. And even if you listen to this and still feel like it's bullshit, then I kind of more strongly encourage you to read it. If this is enough and you're ready to sign up, go for it. Call Rudy or call your life insurance agent and get set up.
I don't think this podcast is enough to make people want to sign up, but hopefully it's enough to make them read the article. And the article presents much better laid out case.
And if you're looking for a more succinct version, just for a quick answer to a question that we didn't give, either message us on the subreddit, email, or the website, or check out the link in the episode description on the website. That'll link to the frequently asked questions on the Chronix Institute's website.
And that's the BayesianConspiracy.com.
Yep.
All right, see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks.